Inspiring Reads. Welcome to Mindful Reader Podcast. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose.
Oh, fantastic.
It's a book
It's a good one.
that's really packed with insights on how to live, a more conscious and fulfilling life. And honestly, who doesn't want that?
Right.
We'll be exploring some pretty thought-provoking concepts,
Yeah.
like the ego, the pain body, and the idea of living fully in the present moment.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Let's dive in.
Let's dive in. I think one of the things that is so compelling about Tolle is that he really puts the ego front and center as like the root of so much suffering.
He does. And I think what's really important about that, too, is that it's not this like evil force that's lurking out there somewhere.
Right.
It's actually a part of our minds.
Mm.
So it's that voice in our head that's constantly, comparing, wanting more, never feeling quite good enough.
Oh, I know that voice.
Yeah.
Always striving, always wanting, never quite satisfied. Have you ever noticed that in your own life?
Absolutely. I think it's something that all of us do to a certain extent. We're sort of driven to achieve, to acquire things, to, get approval from others. And while those aren't bad things in and of themselves, they become problematic when they're fueled by this constant sense of lack, like something's missing.
Yeah. And it's not even just material things, right?
Yeah.
It can be like ideas and beliefs that we get so fixated on.
Absolutely. We can get so fixated on, being right, defending our viewpoints, that we actually, lose sight of the genuine connection and understanding.
Yeah. So if the ego is this kind of tricky character that can cause so much trouble, what's the antidote? How do we loosen its grip?
Well, his central message is that awareness is key. The first step is simply noticing the ego without judgment. So, pay attention to that voice in your head when it starts chattering.
Okay.
When you find yourself comparing yourself to others, when you're feeling that sense of lack.
So becoming more of an observer of our thoughts rather than just being completely swept away by them?
Precisely. And, that ability to step back and observe, that's what he calls presence. It's about shifting our focus from the constant stream of thoughts to the present moment to what's actually happening right here, right now.
And this leads us to another really fascinating and kind of unsettling concept that he introduces, which is this idea of the pain body.
Yes, the pain body.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So the pain body is essentially this hidden reservoir of past emotional pain that we carry around with us. It's made up of, old hurt traumas, negative emotions, all the stuff that we haven't fully processed.
So it's not just about what's happening in the present moment, but also all the baggage that we've kind of accumulated over time.
Exactly. And here's the thing. The pain body can be activated by seemingly small things in our present lives.
Oh, yeah.
So it can lead to overreactions, negative thought spirals, even physical discomfort.
That makes me think of a time I was having like a really stressful day at work, and then someone cut me off in traffic on the way home.
Oh.
And, normally I would just brush it off. But that day I had this totally outsized reaction, like anger, frustration,
Yeah.
The whole 9 yards.
Sure. I think that's a perfect example of the pain body in action. Something seemingly insignificant happens,
Right.
but it taps into that reservoir of old pain, and suddenly we're reacting from this place of hurt that has very little to do with the present situation.
Yeah. So how do we deal with this pain body? Is it about going back and rehashing all of our past traumas?
Not necessarily. What Tolle suggests is that the key is to simply observe the pain body without judgment. So when you feel those intense emotional reactions, just acknowledge them.
Okay.
Just say to yourself, okay, this is my pain body being activated.
So creating that space between ourselves and the pain so we don't get totally consumed by it.
Exactly. That space allows us to actually choose how we respond rather than just reacting automatically from that place of pain.
It's such a powerful concept. It's like reclaiming control of our emotional responses. But how do we actually DO that? How do we become more present and less reactive in those moments?
Well, that's where the practice of living in the now comes in, which is really the heart of his teachings.
Yeah, and this is something so many people struggle with, right?
Yeah.
Our minds are constantly bouncing between past regrets and future worries, rarely fully present in the moment.
And that's exactly what the ego wants. It wants to keep us trapped in thoughts about the past, anxieties about the future, and it prevents us from experiencing the peace and joy that's available to us right now.
It's funny how the only moment we truly have is now. The past is gone. The future hasn't happened yet. And yet we spend so much energy on dwelling on what was or worrying about what might be.
It's true. We sacrifice the present moment, the only moment we actually have, for these mental time travels that often just lead to more suffering.
So how do we break free from this mental time warp and become more present?
Yeah.
Are there any specific techniques that Tolle suggests?
There are one of the simplest and most powerful techniques is to focus on your breath.
Okay.
So just by bringing your attention to the physical sensation of breathing in and breathing out, you can really anchor yourself in the present moment.
Sounds a lot like mindfulness practice.
Yeah.
Just noticing the breath going in and out without trying to change it or judge it.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is that it's something you can do anytime, anywhere. You can practice it while you're sitting in meditation. You can practice it while you're walking. You can even practice it while you're doing everyday tasks.
Well, that's great because that means we can integrate this practice into our lives, even if we don't have hours to dedicate to formal meditation or anything like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be just about the breath either. He also suggests paying attention to your senses. So really noticing the sights, the sounds, the smells, the textures around you. When you engage your senses fully, you're less likely to get lost in thought.
Right. It's like training ourselves to become more aware of what's happening right here, right now, rather than
Yeah.
being lost in that mental chatter.
Exactly. And as you cultivate this presence, you'll start to experience a greater sense of peace, joy, and connection to life.
It sounds like a process, though, right? We
Yeah.
don't just wake up one morning and suddenly transcend our egos.
You're absolutely right. It's a journey.
Right.
There will be challenges, there will be moments of resistance. But what Tolle assures us is that the more we practice presence, the more natural it becomes. It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Okay, so we've talked about the ego, the pain body, and this idea of living in the now. But where does all of this lead? What's Tolle's ultimate vision?
Well, he believes that as individuals awaken to their true nature, they contribute to a collective shift in consciousness.
Hmm.
So he envisions a world where more and more people are living from this place of awareness, compassion, and connection.
So he calls it a new earth. It sounds pretty utopian, but is it really possible?
He doesn't present it as some far-off fantasy.
Right.
He actually sees it as an emerging reality, a possibility that's within our reach.
Mm-hmm.
And he believes that each person's awakening contributes to this collective transformation.
So it's not just about individual happiness, but about actually creating a better world for everyone.
That's the idea. When we free ourselves from the limitations of the ego, we naturally become more compassionate, more connected to others, and more committed to creating a world that reflects those values.
I love that this seems to tie into this idea of purpose as well, right? He talks about both inner and outer purpose.
He does, and he emphasizes that our inner purpose comes first. It's about aligning with our true nature, which is inherently whole and complete.
Okay.
Our outer purpose, how we express our gifts in the world, naturally flows from that inner alignment.
So if we're living from that place of presence and awareness,
Yeah.
our actions will naturally align with our purpose.
Exactly. And when our actions are aligned with our purpose, we experience this really deep sense of fulfillment and meaning. Our work becomes an expression of who we truly are, not just a way to make a living or get ahead.
I love that. It's about finding that sweet spot where our passions and talents meet the needs of the world.
Precisely. And he even points to examples throughout history of people who embodied this kind of aligned action. Think about Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, individuals who made really profound contributions to the world by living from that place of deep inner purpose.
Yeah, their work wasn't just about achieving some personal success. It was about serving something much greater than themselves.
That's right. And that's the question he invites us to consider. How can we, each in our own unique way, contribute to the creation of a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world?
It's a big question. And it feels especially relevant considering the state of things today.
It is. It's a question worth sitting with. What stands out to you so far about his vision?
I think one of the most compelling ideas is this notion that personal transformation and collective transformation are intertwined.
Right.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
We can work on ourselves and work towards a better world, and those efforts actually reinforce each other.
It's this beautiful, interconnected dance.
Yeah. It's like that Gandhi quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. It all starts with us.
Absolutely. And that change begins with becoming aware of our own, thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. It's about understanding the patterns that keep us stuck.
But let's be real for a second. This whole awakening thing sounds pretty challenging. Are we really expected to just transcend our egos overnight and float around in a constant state of bliss?
Well, he definitely doesn't sugarcoat it.
Mhm.
He acknowledges that there will be bumps along the way. The ego doesn't give up its control easily.
And I imagine the pain body puts up a fight, too. It's not like those old wounds just magically disappear overnight.
You're right. In fact, he warns us that the pain body might even intensify at first as we start to shine a light on it.
Mm.
It's like opening up an old dusty attic. Things can get a little messy before they get better.
So how do we deal with that resistance? How do we kind of keep moving forward even when it feels tough?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of non-resistance.
Okay.
It's about accepting what is without labeling it as good or bad. It's about allowing our thoughts and emotions to simply be without getting caught up in the story that they're telling.
That sounds a lot like what we were talking about earlier with observing the ego and the pain body, just creating that space.
Precisely. It's all interconnected. When we resist our experience, we actually create more suffering. But when we can accept it, we open ourselves up to the possibility of transformation.
It's like that saying, what we resist persists. The more we fight against our thoughts and feelings, the stronger they seem to become.
Exactly. And that's where practices like mindfulness and conscious breathing can be so helpful. They help us cultivate that space of non-resistance.
Right. We were talking about focusing on the breath as a way to kind of anchor ourselves in the present moment. Are there any other practices that Tully recommends?
Yeah, he also talks about paying attention to our bodies.
Okay.
Often our bodies are giving us signals about what's happening emotionally, but we're so caught up in our heads that we miss them. So it's about tuning into those physical sensations, whether it's tension, tightness, or even a sense of lightness and ease.
It's like becoming more embodied, more in tune with our physical selves.
And that embodiment can be incredibly grounding.
Yeah.
It helps us feel more present, more centered, less reactive to all of the ups and downs that life throws our way.
But even with all these tools and practices, there's still going to be times when we fall back into old patterns.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we're human after all.
Of course, awakening is not a linear process.
Right.
It's more like a spiral.
Okay.
We might make progress, and then we might find ourselves facing similar challenges again.
So it's about being patient with ourselves, knowing that it's okay to stumble and get back up again.
Absolutely. And remembering that every moment is a fresh start. We can always choose to come back to presence, to awareness, to the truth of who we are.
That's really reassuring. It kind of takes the pressure off of needing to be perfect all the time.
And the more we practice, the more we strengthen that muscle of awareness and compassion. And as we do that, we not only transform our own lives, but we contribute to the possibility of a new world, a world that embodies those values.
Which brings us back to his vision for a new earth. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like? What does a world grounded in awareness and compassion actually look like?
Well, he doesn't lay out like a blueprint for this new world.
Right.
He emphasizes that it's not about striving for a specific outcome, but about a fundamental shift in consciousness in our way of being in the world.
So it's more about a change in attitude than a change in external circumstances.
Exactly. It's about moving from a place of fear and separation to a place of love and connection. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected, that what affects one of us affects all of us.
And that shift in consciousness, that shift from fear to love, would then naturally lead to changes in the way we live, the way we relate to each other and the planet.
Absolutely. He believes that a world that's rooted in awareness and compassion would be more sustainable, more peaceful, more just...
It's a beautiful vision. But I have to admit, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the challenges that we face.
Yeah.
Like, how do we even begin to make a dent in all that?
Well, he doesn't offer a step-by-step plan for global transformation.
Right.
He believes that the most powerful way to create change is to start with ourselves. As more and more individuals awaken to their true nature, that shift in consciousness naturally ripples outwards.
It's like that idea of the 100th monkey, right?
Yeah.
Once a critical mass of individuals embody a new way of being, it kind of spreads rapidly throughout the whole population.
That's a great analogy. And he believes we're already seeing signs of this shift happening. More and more people are becoming interested in mindfulness, meditation, spiritual practices. There's a growing awareness of our interconnectedness.
It does feel like there's a growing movement towards more conscious living. We see it in the environmental movement, the rise of ethical consumerism, the increasing focus on social justice issues.
Those are all positive signs. And while there's still a long way to go, his message is ultimately one of hope and possibility. He believes we have the power to create a better world, and it starts with each of us.
So it's not about waiting for someone else to fix things. It's about each of us taking responsibility for our own awakening and contributing to that collective shift.
Precisely. And even small actions, when they're aligned with awareness and compassion, can have this ripple effect. We never know how far our actions might reach or who they might inspire.
It's like that Margaret Mead quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has."
That's a perfect way to put it. His work reminds us that each of us has the potential to be a part of that group, to be agents of change in the world. It starts with that inner transformation, with awakening to who we truly are.
Yeah, it really feels like we're all in this together, walking this path of awakening and creating a new reality one step at a time.
It is, and you said it perfectly. And I think Tolle gives us such a powerful framework, for understanding this journey and navigating the inevitable challenges.
Yeah. So let's recap some of the key takeaways from A New Earth for our listeners.
Right.
What are the most important things to remember as they kind of embark on their own exploration?
Well, I think the foundation is recognizing the ego for what it is.
Okay.
That collection of thoughts and beliefs that create this sense of separation and limitation. It's about seeing how it operates, how it keeps us trapped in those cycles of wanting and never feeling quite enough.
And that awareness is the first step towards kind of loosening its grip.
Exactly. Once we see it for what it is, we have a choice. We can choose to react from those old patterns, of fear and insecurity, or we can choose to respond from a place of presence.
Right. And that's where the practices come in. Mindfulness, conscious breathing, body awareness, all these tools that help us to cultivate presence and step out of that ego's control.
You got it. And as we practice, we start to experience that peace and joy that's available to us in each moment. It's not about, achieving some blissful state, but about tapping into that inherent wholeness that's always there.
We also talked about the pain body, that reservoir of old hurts and traumas that can really hold us back from experiencing life fully.
Yes. And the key to dealing with the pain body is not to try to make it disappear. It's about observing it without judgment, acknowledging its presence without getting swept away by its energy.
So creating that space between ourselves and the pain so we can choose how we respond rather than just reacting from that place of old hurt.
Exactly. And as we do that, the pain body gradually loses its grip on us. We become freer, lighter, more able to live from a place of love and compassion.
And this all connects back to purpose, right? Finding that place where our passions and talents meet the needs of the world.
Absolutely, it does. When we're aligned with our true nature, our inner purpose naturally unfolds. We're drawn to activities that are both meaningful to us and that contribute to something larger.
It's like finding that sweet spot where we're both fulfilled and making a difference.
That's a great way to put it. And as we live from that place of purpose, we become agents of change, contributing to a more conscious and harmonious world.
His work really offers a roadmap for personal and collective transformation. It's inspiring, but it's also a lot to take in.
It is. And I think what makes A New Earth so powerful is that it speaks to this deep longing within us, this longing for connection, for meaning, for a world that reflects our highest values.
It's a call to awaken to our true potential,
Yeah.
both as individuals and as a collective.
Exactly. And it reminds us we're not alone on this journey, We're all in this together, each playing our part in creating this new reality.
Before we wrap up, I have one final question for you.
Okay.
If the ego is an illusion, as Tolle suggests, who are we really? And what becomes possible when we let go of that limited identity?
That's a profound question.
It is.
And ultimately, it's one that each of us has to answer for ourselves through direct experience. But I think the key lies in experiencing that shift in consciousness firsthand. It's about moving beyond those confines of the ego and connecting with something much vaster, something that encompasses all of life. It's about realizing that we're not separate individuals, but expressions of a single universal consciousness.
And from that place of connection, from that realization of our true nature, what becomes possible?
Well, the possibilities are limitless. Love, compassion, creativity, joy, peace. All of these qualities become so much more accessible when we're no longer bound by the ego's fears and insecurities. We become more fully ourselves. And in doing so, we contribute to creating a world that reflects those values.
That's beautiful. I encourage you to explore Tolle's work further and see how these ideas resonate with your own experience. And ask yourself what becomes possible when you let go of who you think you are. It's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely.
Mindful Reader.